All right. You ready?
Yeah.
Neil's successful track record of working on large-scale, high-demand web systems led him to develop SailThrough's unique smart data capabilities. Prior to founding SailThrough, he was the CTO for Music Nation, an AliCorp company, A Small World, and Money Media, which was acquired by the Financial Times. Today, he's also an advisor to several startups, including Refinery 29 and Zoo2, and is a venture partner at Bowery Capital, a seed-stage venture fund focused on transformational upgrades to enterprise technologies. He was also named to the Silicon Alley 100 in 2011 and 2012, and is one of New York City's most influential and coolest technology leaders. So how about now a real round of applause for Neil? This whole night's really just we clap and we leave. That's it. So where did you grow up?
I grew up outside south of London, just out of the orbital of London.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
any early childhood entrepreneurial endeavors?
Actually, yes, and but not till I was like 14, 15. I did actually start to do like a web design company when I was about 15, 16, I think, in the back then.
How'd that go?
Not very well.
Did the internet exist yet?
It did, yeah, but it was pretty much CompuServe addresses and God knows what else. But yeah, no, it was happening. But then, but yeah, that was about it though.
What kind of work did your parents do?
So I had the benefit of having a lot of experience from both of my father and my stepfather. My father was a greengrocer, which is we sell fruit and vegetables, only fruit and vegetables, like a deli, but no cans, no nothing else, just fruit and vegetables. And my dad would go up to market every morning at 3 in, come back, stock the shop up and get going. And then he would go home for a nap at 3, and we would then he'd go back to the store and tidy it up for the next day. So we didn't really see a lot of him. But I grew up in that store, and that's how I got to know my dad, was really working in that store. And then my stepfather, on the other hand, was an entrepreneur. He tried, and not a great entrepreneur, I'll say that. But I mean, just the exposure of having both someone who's an entrepreneur on the side of the greengrocer sole trader, and my stepfather having the entrepreneurialness to sort of do many businesses over many different years, succeeding in the end in sort of doing a lot of house restoration kind of stuff. But having seen those challenges of both of those going through that, it was, I think, what drove me to be an entrepreneur.
So let's revisit that story in a minute. But tell people how many people have heard of or are familiar with what SailThrough's business model is, what they do? Not so many. So why don't you tell people about SailThrough and what it's all about?
So SailThrough is a marketing platform. We built a platform to solve for the consumer rather than solve for the marketer. What I mean by that is we have built a platform to provide the best possible experience for the end consumer. So we personalize the website, the email, the in-app experience for our customers. And our customers are publishers, they're e-commerce companies. And what we do is we track the hell out of every single one of those consumers that comes on their sites. And we build up a profile so that we can make the experience better. We don't transfer that data anywhere. We don't sell that data. We don't buy data. We're just building up a profile so that the brand, our customer, can give a better experience to their end user.
So let's say we recently had in this chair Kevin Ryan of Business Insider, who I believe is a client, was an early client.
They're a very early client. Their success is due to our product.
So if I open an email from Business Insider, and she opens an email from Business Insider, what's likely to be different based on it being powered by SailThrough?
The entire email will pretty much, unless it's like a single content piece, which is like their top 10 or their chart emails. If it's got the normal style of 15 pieces of content in there, every single one will be unique. The chances of anybody having a duplicate in this room, if they were all subscribers, are incredibly infinitesimally small.
So 150 people in here, you send out 150 unique emails to every single person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on which personality characteristics?
It's actually on their traffic. So we're literally analyzing all of the learnings of everything they enjoy to read and consume. So if it's a brand new user, we've only got 1 or 2 page views. Even that's enough for us to start to tell us what we should be putting out there. We're taking the scores from the editors, what the editors are telling us, what the real-time traffic is telling us, and what the consumer has told us in the past from their clickstream. And all of that gets factored into that email. It also gets factored into the website when they're on the website, and article pieces on the right, the slider at the bottom, the in-app experience, web experience, all of that. Same.
We had somebody before talk about what he thought was a creepy experience of facial recognition, and there are privacy concerns that typically come up, I'm sure, with your sales calls. What do you tell people who say, well, that's a little creepy, I don't want you guys personalizing every single one of my experiences, predicting what you think I want?
Well, so then we, really believe in giving the consumer the best possible experience. So we absolutely want, if the consumer wants to opt out of that kind of tracking, then they should be able to be opt out, brand aware. Right? So that's what we offer as a company, but we believe that if you were to say to, Coca-Cola, I never want you to track me ever, I can still be a customer, but I don't want you to track anything of my movements. And that means everything that, my data gets washed into the sort of, to the point where it becomes an aggregate statistic. And so you literally just opt them out of, you don't have, because otherwise you're opting out of email over here, you're opting out of this over there, you're opting out of your data set being used in third parties. That shouldn't be the case. You want to build trust with the consumer. So you've literally got to give the consumer the option to say, hey, I don't want to be tracked. And they shouldn't be tracked. And they shouldn't even be tracked on the open of an email or a click on an email if that's what they want. And so that's what we actually provide to our customers. We want to, again, if you put the consumer first, if you truly do put the consumer first, then you will actually look after that consumer's data set, and you will actually want to do that because you're going to build trust, and then you're going to get more loyal customers.
So in general, people have shown that they say they don't want a lot of their private data online, but their actions have shown otherwise. People tend to share things that if you ask them, they wouldn't share, like their weight. And then there was something done where people were sharing even every single credit card transaction was getting auto-tweeted, which if they had tested and people said they wouldn't, but did. So I'm curious, what percentage of people opt out of the sale-through powered experience?
Well, I think that not many. And the fact is, a lot of people don't know they can. A lot of people don't even understand that it's actually happening. I think that people in this room do, and I think they're very technically driven, but we get stuck in our own heads once in a while. We think that just because we do, that everybody knows about it. So not many people opt out of it, and I think that it becomes an education factor. It becomes and it becomes more and more of a factor, and in the respects as it becomes more visible, everyone's talking about it right now. Still, not a lot of understanding of it. Credit card companies have been selling our data for years, ever since they existed. And we've been okay with that because it wasn't so visible. Every single direct mail piece that you get at home is targeted based on your credit card details and has been for the last 30 years. But now it's more visible. Now it's getting really, really intricate. It's right into every single it can be down to the real-time moment of buying just to keep using Coca-Cola, but buying a Coke in a store. It can get down to that level. I think that's where the visibility factor is getting there, and that's where it has to be, that there needs to be a company that can actually build trust and actually sort of say to the consumer, we will not sell your data, we will not buy your data, we will operate ethically so that we can actually build trust with our customers and always have them coming back.
So on the flip side, for an e-commerce company that uses the sell-through technology, what kind of a lift can people see by personalizing their message?
An advert. So I mean, for our publishers and stuff, we've tripled page views for our publishers. We've depending on the content, depending on how often they, how much they produce. E-commerce, the same thing, depending on how many SKUs they have and how much. But we've increased revenues by 15 to 25 to 30%, reduction in churn by 74%. All of these kind of things. So when you put the consumer first, when you actually really live those words and actually do that, it's not rocket science. It's just the fact that we've scaled the data element that we can do it at that capacity.
So there was a time at which you were just a guy in a room with this idea, right? What gave you the inspiration for this whole product?
Well, when I was a CTO, as you know, and we talked about some of that, I would do redevelopments. I was brought in when sites weren't scaling. I would get called in to kind of keep them alive while the business was running. And there was something in every single one of the companies that I did, which was all over the place, B2B, B2C, that was inherently annoying to me. And that was that we were annoying our end consumer. And it didn't matter if that was a reader of our publication or if a buyer of our software. We would just annoy the crap out of them until they converted. And this was the height of marketing technology. And frankly, a lot of the industry still believes in that. And it's like, let's just annoy the crap out of them until they come back and convert. And that's a win for everybody. But I didn't realize why it so annoyed me when I'd see this every time. And the fact was, it took me a while frankly, after I'd founded Sale-Through, to realize that it came from the fact that when I was working in my dad's greengrocer store, that consumer came first every single time. And back in my dad, it was a service, place. I mean, there would be 5 people standing up front in brown coats, and a person would walk in the store, and they would be walked around the store, and they would be given an amazing experience. My dad knew every single one of the customers. He knew what they were going to buy he knew what they were going to buy before they did. It was about giving that experience every single time. And I remember the troubles, the stress that he went through when he converted the store to a self-service, because the supermarkets had come into England, and he'd actually, because of the service, because of the brand, had actually fought off the supermarkets. The local supermarkets stopped selling fruit and vegetables. But he had to evolve with the times as well, and so he converted his own store to a self-service store, and that was a big moment for him, because he was like, well, how am I going to continue to have a relationship with a customer when they're walking around the store, and getting their own stuff, and rummaging through the oranges, which he really hated. But it was a big challenge for him. And at that point it became, okay, well then he had the relationship elsewhere, right? He would interact with them every single time when they're in the store, and just make sure they always had a fantastic experience, so they kept coming back. And he was incredibly successful as a greengrocer, with multiple two stores towards the end, and it was great. And the customers still, I go back into that town that I haven't been in 30 years, and they know my name, and and someone will recognize me, and someone will talk to me, and they'll be like, oh my God, how's your dad, and blah blah blah. My dad, actually, when he retired, he loved that area, but he said, I can't live there anymore. He's like, I can't walk down the street. So he moved away.
You can't talk to people anymore.
Well, no, because he couldn't get anything done. He was like, walk down the street, he'd run into like 20 people, and they want to know what he was doing or everything. He was like, I can't move on.
If only all businesses had that problem. So let's go back to this founding moment, right? You're being brought in as a consultant in most cases, right?
Yeah.
To help them deal with the marketing issue, or you just saw that as a byproduct of the things you were helping with technically?
No, I was normally helping with the technology, because the system would normally be falling over once or twice a month or something, and that's when I'd get the call. And
when did you decide, okay, it's time to actually build a business around this personalization concept?
So I had the idea a good 2 years prior, and I was like, someone will do it. And I didn't do it. And 2 years later, I did a redevelopment for Kevin Ryan for Music Nation, and it was the biggest shit show I've ever been involved in. And it was, we did a redevelopment, and the reason it was a shit show was because we did this redevelopment, and we had to do it in 6 weeks. And it was over Christmas and New Year's, and I worked every single minute of every day that was alive. I stripped down the system and rebuilt it back up on the system side and everything to get this thing live for a public launch date. And at that point, I was like, I'm not getting paid enough for this. I was like, I have to work for myself. And it was really that really kicked me over the edge to say, like, I think I've got to try, and I've actually got to go forward and do this. And it was really, I think, for me, it was like the last crowning moment. I tried a lot of things on the side. I don't know how many different products in the last, the 5 years before that. And I think it was the moment that kicked me in the rear to be like, you have to either, jump in full in, or just, continue to do what you're doing right now.
So on that point, there's a lot of people who try to bring their startups to life on the side. Do you think that's
really,
doable?
Really difficult.
Why?
I think it's doable, and I think people have succeeded in it, but the chances of getting a business, off the ground and funded are small, right? But if you're doing it on the side, it's really hard. And I think that my one thing is like, if the scratch is there, you've got to itch it, and you've got to do it, because you've really got to jump in, because the chances are the business is going to need more than 100% of your time. And I would encourage everybody to take that chance at least once. It's a big learning experience, it's a big risk, but it's a challenge to start a business, and I think it's a worthwhile challenge. It's such a fun and learning experience, but you've sometimes you've just got to jump in.
So you have this idea. What was the very first? Did you first build? You have the luxury or benefit of being a technical person. So did you build the product day one? Did you try to fund it day one?
No, actually, I tried to build it day one. I think that I think, and I actually try and when I go back to England, I try and speak about this a lot because I think that in England they even have a bigger trouble with this. But we're taught as kids very much not to ever take money from anyone. And I think that was inherent in me. And I was like, I'm not going to raise money. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And so I bootstrapped. I literally my own capital the whole way and started the company. I built a very lightweight product, which was really, frankly, a template management system for email was pretty much all it was. And started selling it. And I got it to doing about $20,000 in MRR. And that was, I couldn't get it past that. I was just kept going. Just stayed at the same level for almost 2 years. I came back from a ski. I'm a big skier, and we run a ski race every year. And I came back one year from it, and I'd just done it, and it's like 4 days of hell, and I'd trying to do the business, trying to do that as well. And I was like, I've either got to shut this down or I've got to fund it. And so that was the moment that I actually went and funded it. Otherwise, I think that it's so easy for us to understand that it's hard to take money from someone, and therefore it's like this kind of weird thing to actually go out there and do it.
So I mean, getting a business up to $20,000 a month in recurring revenue is for some people a massive success. How was it hard for you to decide to make this transition to, okay, now I'm going to not only raise capital and bring in some outside funds, but actually relinquish some of the control that goes along with that?
It was less about the relinquish of the control. I think it was more about, I was probably, if I was honest with myself, I was scared of it. I didn't know what I was doing. And I think that fear of not knowing was probably more of the reason I hadn't done it. Plus what I was saying earlier. But I had to. I was like, I was playing. It was a negative. It was coming out of my pocket, and every month. And I was like, 2 years in, I was like, this cannot continue.
So how did you raise that first round? Who did you approach, and how did you position it?
The seed round was also a shit show. The seed round was so I had no clue where to start. And so I went and pitched as many people as I could in as short a period of time as possible. And it actually worked out quite well because the fact was I couldn't really take my eyes off the business. I had clients calling me all the time. It was, busy kind of day-to-day kind of thing. And so I literally ran around New York City trying to get investment. And the thing about it was that I actually created artificial buzz because it's a small city. And everybody in the VC community was talking, and they'd be like, "Oh, have you seen Sail Through?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I did." And I was like, because I crammed them all into the same 3-week period, they didn't really have any chance not to. And so everyone was like, "Oh, have you seen Sail? Oh, what is this company Sail Through?" Blah, blah, blah. And then the next thing I know, I had a lot of them in it. Now the funny thing is, this is 2010, and this is like January of 2010, and there wasn't that much of a community. No one was talking valuations. No one was. It was a very oblique kind of weird world, and it was all these institutions, and so no one put any money in. I mean, literally, I have 7 institutions, no angels, in a 1 million seed round. And I think I'd challenge you to find a business that still has that out there, even today with the funding that's going on. It's like, it's nuts. No one, they literally at the last minute, one of the investors called me up and they said, I don't know, 4 or 5 days from closing, they said, what's the board structure? And I was like, there isn't one. And they're like, okay. I was like, great. And I put the phone down. I'm like, I turned around to my colleague that was in there, and I'm like, I think I just negotiated no board. And I was like, hadn't even occurred to me to do that until that moment. But hey, it worked out. So we didn't actually set up a board until the A, which was actually fantastic because I don't know how we would have gotten anything done in the first year if we, had to prepare board decks every 6 weeks.
So, well, let's talk about that. What you find resonates not just with the seed round, but in general, like how your best practices for fundraising. What have you found works for those who don't have a fancy accent?
The best way to do it is really to work backwards. You literally have to run it as a process. And you have to work backwards from the date. So it's going to take 3 to 4 months for any kind of fundraise, whether it's a seed round or an A or B or a C. It doesn't really matter. It's going to take about 4 months. And you work backwards from that date, unless you're Instagram or any of these other guys. I mean, that's pretty much how it's going to go for the normal people. And you work backwards from the 4 months out, and you say, that's when I want to sign a term sheet. And that means that if you're going to sign a term sheet then you better have, final meetings the 3 weeks beforehand. And venture capital companies pretty much only, if it's seed round, you don't have to go to a partner meeting. Anything bigger than a seed round, you need to go to the partner meetings. Most VCs have the partner meetings on Mondays, so you aren't going to get many meetings in a 3-week period. So you got to figure that one out, right? And so you got 3 weeks where you're like, so those are the final partner meetings. Then you come forward a bit more and you say, okay, well I need to be having really good conversations with some of the VCs here. And I need to be having a lot of conversations with a lot of VCs right here in these couple of weeks. And then you run the whole friggin' thing like a giant RFP, and you run towards it.
But there's some people who see anybody who bites, I'm going to follow. But did you try to be more selective than that?
I didn't know what the hell I was doing on my seed round. Let me say that. As I've gone through it, and I understand quite a lot now about fundraising, yeah, you definitely do not want to do that. I actually got stalled by doing exactly that in the seed round. I met 2 firms that wanted to work together to lead the round, and I should just have walked away from that because legal, it was meant to be a convertible note is meant to be a really easy structure. And because we went down this route, it delayed by 6 weeks. And the document that came out of the 2 combined VC firms and the lawyers made out like bandits on that one. It was a 62-page document. It was going to cost more to do the seed than it would have done a Series A. Because so yeah, you definitely don't want to follow. You don't want to just follow the bite. You've got to. You literally. It's almost if you've ever run an RFP process as an employee, buying a vendor stuff, that's essentially what you're doing. And it would be great if you could just run it like an RFP process and have them pitch you. It's not going to be the case. But, that's how you should run it. It's run it like a complete request for a proposal and just run it like that.
Was there, who made the decision, or did you make the decision around convertible note versus price round that early on?
No, so it was quite interesting. My seed round. I started out as a convertible note. It's easy to punt things, valuation, blah blah blah, and it's nice and cheap, blah blah. We were going to raise 500,000 to 750. I really wanted the 750. Ended up raising the 750, and sort of the term sheet that got put in front of me in the end, which was horrific, but it was prior to the market that we have today. Was a priced round, but it was on a sliding scale. So if I raised $1 million, I was going to get the same dilution as if I raised 750. When you do that to me, I'm like, fine, I'll go. I will find that. I will take as much as I can for what I'm going to get. So I got it to $1 million. But the crazy thing was that I will leave names out. But I had this term sheet, and the thing why you really want to run these things like a process is because you need more than one term sheet at the end. And if you've not got everybody on the same timeline, you're not going to have them. You're not going to have them at the same time. You're going to have one term sheet. And so I had one, and he put it in front of me. And obviously they normally have a time limit on them, and whatnot. But he asked me to come up to lunch the next day and at a bar. And I was like, well, I'm English, and we normally do business in bars in England, but it's not so much a thing in America. I was like, that's kind of odd. Anyway. So it's like noon or whatever, and he sits down. He's like, "Yeah, so we really want to do this deal. Really excited, blah blah blah." He's like, "But if you walk out that door, the deal's off the table." And I was like, "You dick." And I sat there. I was like, it was a hard moment. It was it was a bad term sheet. It was participating preferred. It was just a messy, nasty term sheet. I eventually signed it.
Why'd you decide to sign it?
Because I think I wasn't willing to risk the fact of not funding the business. The good news is, in the A, we did not. When you normally do a seed terms, you pretty much follow the terms all the way through, pretty much. So if you get a bad, shitty term sheet right at the beginning, then you'll just keep following that term sheet. So when you do the A and the B, now participating preferred means that, you know, the 1 million that we raised, if we were to sell, you know, for 10 million a year later, 1 million would come off the top, and then 9 million would be distributed. Right now, so if that had carried on, I've raised $48 million. That would be $48 million at the top of the goddamn thing. So you don't want to do that. Right now, the market was different then. The market, you don't see these kind of terms that often. And if you do, run. It's not the market. It's a dodgy VC. But anyway, the good news is in the A, we were like, okay, this was a crappy term sheet. I want a clean term sheet. I went out for the A, and I went running around the city saying, all I want is a clean term sheet. I want a super clean. I want to go from there. And we got a really. Not only did we get a super clean term sheet, it was the term sheet was less than one side of piece of paper. It was fantastic. And then in the B, we brought in Benchmark, and I used the brand of Benchmark to go back to the original investors from the seed round and to tell them that Benchmark was coming in, and if you want to be attributed to such a big brand, you're going to take those rights back and take them off the table. And so we went back and we took them all off. So we got rid of the crappy, shitty terms in the end.
How did that go over?
There was some. It was actually not. It was actually pretty easy. All of New York institutionals of the people that were in and everything were like, "This is a company we've invested in. Now Benchmark's invested in. Yeah, we'll do that." I was like, "Okay."
So how do people create?
I was a lot more worried that it was going to be a big deal, but it wasn't.
How do people create the momentum you seem to have been very successful at creating to fund their companies, to get in front of the right people, to ultimately close these deals on the fundraising side?
On the fundraising deal, I think it's the hustle. You just got to hustle like hell. It's
How many no's did you hear before you got a yes?
Oh, I mean, it's 95% no's. I mean, you're gonna. It's the most. What is it? That Winston Churchill quote that I will definitely get wrong, but success is going from failure to failure with enthusiasm. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, you're gonna get no's every which way you go, and you got to be okay with that. And you got to just keep running through because you got to believe in it. You got to absolutely have unshakable resolve and belief that you're going to do it. Because when so many people tell you you're wrong, it drives you mad. But I think for me, it just drove me further. So I kept going, and I think that's really that's what you've got to find, because you got to know. If you believe in it and it's your product and you actually really believe in a different approach and how you're going for it, then you should just run through every single wall to do that. And I think that's the energy that you can compel into the fundraising process.
Was there ever a time when you thought maybe they're right? Maybe I don't have a business here?
Many. I think the entrepreneurial stuff is like the biggest challenge with it, and maybe why we all love to do it is just the ups and the downs. I mean, it's like literally one day to the next, or frequently, 1 minute to the next. You can be on the high of the world after signing a deal, and then like 10 minutes later, you're like, what the hell? Oh, just dealing with some other problem. And you're like just low as anything. So I think that, yes, there's always doubtful points. But I think that, you know, the fundamental belief in what you're trying to do and change is always going to drive you forward.
So what were some things you did that you've seen, you know, when you were a much smaller entity at the time, that have carried through now that you're, you know, 160 plus?
Some of the
decisions you made then that have been positive.
Interesting. I mean, one of the things I'm always passionate about, and I love very much, is that we, early days of the company, an engineer was learning German, and he was paying, I don't know, he was doing it at NYU, and he was doing the paperwork, and I was talking to him about it, and it was like $600 or something. And I said, well, we'll pay for that. And he said, well, why? And I was like, we don't have any German customers. You don't really need to know German for programming side. And I was like, because it's education and you're personally developing, right? And that moment there, I was like, absolutely, we should pay for this. I mean, like, if you're exercising the muscle in your brain, if you're exercising that muscle and actually doing that, I'm going to benefit as well as the employer. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's in a completely adjacent, you know, or non-adjacent area. I was like, I'm going to benefit from that. We are all going to benefit from that. And I think, and so right then and there was then we set up the personal development fund, which is essentially we give an employee, I forget what the actual amount is right now, but I think it's $1,500 a year, for anything that is educational. And it's like, or anything learning, really. I mean, you know, it's like we've paid for wine tasting, we've paid for trampolining, we've paid for all kinds of crazy things.
Did you just say you're taking us all trampolining?
No. We could all go to the trapeze, though. Maybe we'll do that. No. So so we've and that, I think that to me, and it's really been a passion point for me, because I think that if we're not learning, we get bored, we get stayed. It's just I would hate to not be learning every day, and that you know, if I haven't got that kind of seize for getting stuff done and having things happen and just experiencing new experiences, then I would be bored out of my brains, and I couldn't do that. We've got to continue to further ourselves as a you know, an individual. We've always got to be improving ourselves. And I think that, for me, is one of the major parts of what we really adhere to at Salesforce, is really kind of pushing to the next level. And I think that, you know, where you have to also celebrate when people move on, because there isn't a role for them. If you've taken someone from here and they've moved up and they've really developed new skills and et cetera, and then there isn't actually a current role for them at the company because you've got someone in other areas and they go on to something else, something bigger somewhere else, that's a fantastic moment. It's not a moment that we, you know, should think badly on. It's like, yes, this, you know, we have a good friend that went on to be, you know, was operations at a small 15 or 20 person startup, and he was leading it. And I was like, that's fantastic. And people are like, oh, you know, we're losing a real high caliber. I'm like, look, we've developed a high caliber, and they're moving on. How can we not be happy for that? How can we not be, you know, excited about that?
How do you recruit some of those best people early on?
I think you've. I mean, it comes down to being transparent, that sort of building that trust. But I mean, if you get everybody around that kind of same rallying message of always wanting to learn and be creative and actually do the right things, I don't think it's that difficult. I mean, I think it's recruiting is really about being able to convince people that they should come and follow you and do and believe in the same passion points in what you're doing, and they're gonna thrive on your passion, and passion's a big part of why we all do this.
So we talked about some things that carried through that you were proud of that went well. What about some things that you might have done differently?
Oh, geez. I think what I would have done differently, a big one, once you sort of start going through fundraising and whatnot, if you do go down that route, I'm not saying it's the only answer, it's definitely not, is that you do put on board members. And when I did the A, we did a seat for the common, myself, a seat for the preferred, which was the first big investor, which was RRE, and an independent. And then when we did the B, we did another independent. Now, by the time we did the B, I still hadn't filled the first independent on the A. And I've actually said this to a lot of VCs recently, and I think that it's the value of independent board seats, i.e. someone who is not attributed to the company or the investment stack, is actually someone who's going to be on the board to be a board member. And to have that kind of independent, I would actually use a recruitment firm, because the other factor, and search for it, because the other factor is, as you're growing in the first time of you're not meeting the right people to put in the seat. I mean, like, where are you going to meet the person that you need to put in your independent seat? I mean, you're selling to customers, you're talking to your current investors, you're maybe talking to future investors, you're dealing with everything you do on the day. Where are you going to meet the person that is going to fill that role? Because they're not going to just run into you in the coffee shop.
So are you suggesting that what happens is then that a VC says, hey, here's a good guy to bring in that seat?
Yeah, they do, and that can kind of help. But I think that it should be part of the deal. It should be part of the terms. There's $50,000 to get a recruitment search going and go and fill that independent seat, and we'll do it as a team. And I think that is something that I mean, we're talking about sort of looking at that and how we can do that with some of the Bowery companies, because I think it's vitally important that you get the right independents. because they can be so helpful to the growth of the company. Because a board, no offense to the VCs in the room, but you can end up with non-operators sitting around a table discussing a business. I'm like,
I think that's called venture capital.
But it's like, how is that? I mean, how is that good in the VC's world as well? I mean, how does that work for the venture capital firm? I mean, like, it's not stacking the odds in their favor.
So what about, you guys chose an unusual programming language to build this technology. What about other day-to-day operational issues that you may have done differently from the beginning, or maybe at different points? What are some?
I got stuck on the different language then. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Other things you would have done, in building the business in general that you may have, decisions you might have made differently.
I probably would have been. So I think there was you develop your culture as the company goes along, and you kind of outline it, and you kind of sort of influence people and whatnot. There was a couple of things that we were late to. One, we didn't eliminate for culture misfits, and it was a problem. You kind of have to. You got to get sorted, because otherwise you'll have people that just derail things. And but secondly to that, it was always kind of a little bit like I wanted to influence without dictating. I think now I would dictate. I'm like, this is the culture. Get the hell out if you're not going to live by it.
But are you saying you would dictate the culture or the decision? Like if somebody said, I think we should, I'm wondering what we should do, A, B, or C.
Oh, no, I think the culture, it evolves in the early stages as well, but I think you can sort of outline it as a group and its team and everything, but it's like, it literally is about this is the culture, and if you're not willing to, be part of this culture, this is just not the place for you, and you should leave right now. Because
it's a tough balance, right? Because there's
well, because now you're really being, you're almost like you're almost setting up a religion. You're literally being very much like, this is the way, or the highway, rather than sort of being like, this is our general culture. We want people to kind of sort of fit in with it. You start to take a very hardline approach to it, and I think that's maybe one thing I would say that's a big.
It's not a nice to have; it's a need to have.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you got to. Yeah, and I don't want to deal with assholes. I mean, life is too short.
Yeah.
It's like you've really got to have. You've got to have fun at work. It's got to be somewhere that you want to go, because you're going to spend most of your life there.
So the company started with just you as the founder. You brought on some co-founders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide to do that, and how did you choose who to bring on?
So I had known Ian and Chris for a long time. I'd known Ian for a very long time. So we started the company in 2008. Ian built a lot of the code base in the early days. Chris built most of the system side of things, all of it. I started the business and started selling almost, day one. And so we would, so for the first 2 years, I literally was, selling, and I'd be calling from the plane phone sometimes to get someone to reset a server, because I was like, whatever reason in those early days, if I got on a plane, something was going wrong. And it's weird to think this, but back in 2008, there wasn't as Wi-Fi on every plane. There was hardly any Wi-Fi on any planes. I can always remember I'd land and I'd just be like, I know my phone's going to blow up in a minute, and it's just going to be like alerts from the system going absolutely crazy, and I'd be trying to do all of that at the same time. It was nuts. But anyway, Ian is a phenomenal programmer, and Chris was a phenomenal systems guy that I had met. When you do a lot of redevelopments of websites, you meet and hire a lot of people. You normally, for me, as it was, that I would do these redevelopments and I hire a team, but then, I would get bored with the business that I was working at because it wasn't evolving fast enough, and therefore I'd move on. So you end up recruiting a lot of people. Ian and Chris were easily the guys to go to. They were.
But you were heavily stacked in the technology side of the equation, but not so much on the business and sales side.
Yeah, I failed my business studies A levels.
How did that affect the growth of the company?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm not a big planner. I'll say that. I kind of run it. I think Rebecca's laughing now. Sorry. She works with me. She knows that very well. I'm not a big planner. I just sort of run into things, and I don't think it inhibited us. I think that we hired for a lot of skill sets that I didn't have, and you always hire for people that can do things you can't do. But yes, there is some classical business training that I would love to have. Would I go back and do an MBA? Is no, is the answer.
So are those two co-founders with the company day to day today?
Chris is not, no, and Ian is day to day. Yeah.
Is that so? I mean, so one co-founder breakup or just transition?
It was a transition. I think that we had challenges within the co-founders that didn't work out.
Like what?
It was we needed to move the people management from one person to another, and it didn't work out well in the end.
Were they the wrong co-founders?
No.
What could have salvaged the relationship?
I mean, we're all still good friends now, but I think the
Business relationship.
I think if I had made bolder moves earlier on that area of the technology stack.
If you start another company, would you seek co-founders?
Yes.
Technical?
Yes. I didn't think about it.
No, I mean,
it's like I can't. I've started programming again recently. I can't really program. No, there's no way I would build something anymore. Not something that's going to stay up for a while. If that was the case.
And we're going to take a couple quick questions from the audience. So if you guys have any, get ready. How has this whole experience affected your life personally? I mean, I can personally I can say how several startups deep has been very taxing on my personal life.
It's very taxing, but I think that the benefits that I've had, been able to take advantage of have been amazing, right? I mean, I've had a business coach for 5 years. Right? I've learned more in that experience than so many other ways. I've had interactions with some of the top VCs in the world. I've had conversations with some of the best business leaders of the world. I mean, the exposure that I've had is just fantastic. The taxing, yes, it's huge. It takes a lot of your soul.
How long have you been married?
We've been married the same amount of time.
You mean you and I have been married the same amount of time?
My wife
and your wife have been married the same amount of time.
Yeah, my wife and I got married on the weekend that Lehman collapsed. And I had also decided that was the weekend that I was quitting all the consulting gigs to start the company as well. So that's
nice.
It's been fun.
Has she ever said to you, "I think maybe it's time to get a regular job," or did she then?
I don't know. Did you? Oh no.
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 Does she now?
No.
I didn't see you come in here. Hi. It's not awkward.
No. She's my wife has been an amazing supporter of the craziness that this has been, and to the point where she endured my massive caffeine highs of working from the apartment for 12 hours straight and not seeing a soul and drinking gallons of British tea, and then she'd come home to this just gibbering mess. Which I'm amazed
as opposed to what
survived.
we have here.
Yeah, exactly. I'm amazed we survived that. But no, she's been the pillar of it all, because there's no way we would have been able to do it without her.
Yeah. Have there ever been times where you thought maybe, I find that entrepreneurship can be filled with moments of extreme highs and moments of a lot of doubt and sometimes big lows. Mm-hmm. Have there been times when you've been in some of those troughs and thought maybe I should have just had gone down a more traditional career path?
No, I'm not a good employee. I'm really not. So no, I can't say I have.
All right. Well, so Sailthrough is now 7 years old, right, since its first funding. Yeah. Average life cycle of a startup is typically 7-8 years.
Yeah.
I think it's 7. So presumably in the next few years, there's some kind of an exit. VCs tend to want their money back.
Yeah, they do. I mean, the seed. You also step it out. I mean, like the seed would probably want their money back sooner than now, as it were. But the opportunity there is for us to take. I mean, you know, we're good 2 years out from going public, but that's really that's where we're going.
But what's next for you, regardless?
What's next for me?
Yeah.
Keep building, keep building.
Yeah.
I love it. I love what we're doing. I love what we're creating. And I want to get it to the point. I want to get to the point sooner, even to talk about creepiness and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think it's creepy. But I want to get to the point where we can personalize the digital billboard in the bus stop for the single one person that is about to buy something of one of our brands or about to engage with content. I want to be able to I want to personalize that moment. Now, we have the ability to do that today. I just need people to start being okay broadcasting an ID, not their ID, an ID. And being able to get there, and that's what I'm driving for. I want to be able to. I want to personalize every single digital billboard out there. I want to personalize every single internet. I want to make people's lives so efficient that it gives them time to do other things. So I'm giving people time. That's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Neil.
I'm making time.
Where do you see the line, though, between what you call efficiency and what some people call creepiness?
Well, I'm just right.
Let's talk about that dictator thing again.
I think, like I said, it's got to be a comfort level, right? It's got to be. It's got to. Okay, let me ask you a question. Okay, when you log into,
I asked the question.
Well, it's changing now. When we log into different services, when you have to log into a different service, do you trust to use a Facebook login or a Google login more?
Personally, I actually do neither. I use or sign up with your email. Otherwise, I would opt for Google. But yeah,
so if you had to log into another service, would you use and you had the choice of Facebook or Google, who would go for the Facebook, and who would go for Google? And the reason I think, let me try and summarize and tell me if I'm horribly wrong. The reason I think people trust Google with their data more than they do with Facebook. Why? Because Google has in their blooming mission statement, do no whatever evil or whatever the hell it is. Facebook, on the other hand, has changed their privacy policy 7 times in the last thing. I think that's what the key comes down to, is that if the trust is there, then you will not mind sharing an ID. And it's about building the trust. And as a, community of tech people and everything, I think that's what we have to do. We have to build the trust. And if you build the trust and the brands are doing it, and all of the, then the personalization is not creepy, and you're allowing people to say, I do not want to be tracked. It's vitally important that they can say, I don't want to be tracked. And then, the data elements are happening, but they're just not being tied to an individual. And you can actually build that. And I think that's the way. You just got to build the trust.
What do you use, Facebook or Google?
I'd use Google. I wouldn't trust Facebook with that data.
They're the worst. I'll take a couple questions from the audience. Yes, right up front.